Everyone, Jackie Rose here, founder of Grieving Moms Finding Hope, and this is my dear friend Rochelle. You've met Rochelle a few times, I'm sure, unless this is your first time being with us on Hope After the Landslide. Tonight will be our final night to be having the discussion we've done for Suicide Awareness Month, and we have a couple of questions that we're going to be talking about answering, and then we've got some things to bring about awareness into this dreaded topic. We were talking earlier before we came on about like it's just grief and all these different ways that people pass are just so difficult, especially things like suicide that just surprises us out of nowhere. So, friends that are going to be coming on, please welcome. We welcome you, and we want to see who is watching us tonight. So, put in your name in the comments, where you're from. For those of you that have been on here, you guys know what to do. But if you're coming on for the first time, we'd love to meet you and see. And thank you so much for choosing Grieving Moms Finding Hope. All of our resources can be found on grievingmoms.com because there's just so many, and I'd probably take up the whole entire time talking about them. So thank you, Rochelle, for coming on at the final hour and going through some of these things. We had a little change up in the schedule, but nonetheless, that's why my leaders are so amazing, because they are just so impromptu and they've always got my back. So anyway, Rochelle joined us a few weeks ago and we were talking about some other things. And so, hi, Tracy. So tonight, the first thing I'm going to ask is, and how do you face reoccurring triggers like anniversaries, holidays, or even unexpected reminders without being pulled under? Now, before we go into that question, the other thing we were discussing was when we use certain words, certain terms, certain things that we discuss that are going to affect someone. For instance, the word triggers. For those of you, God bless you, that have had a son or daughter that um, chose to shoot themselves. It is hard for me to even say that. I've been asked to use a different word, such as activator. And then I was like, well, there's so many other things that we can bring up. Rochelle lost her son Kobe, that was, by a train. And so, we people that don't know Rochelle or didn't know Rochelle, like I didn't at first, were talking about trains and using something in context as a lesson. And we just don't know in that moment. So all of these words, the enemy's trying to use them in a way to set you back. So recognize them and identify that these things are going to come up. If the people that you know and love talk about them and it slips, don't get offended by it. Just know that these are words that share different definitions. So bringing us back to this question is how do you face activators, triggers like anniversaries, holidays, or even unexpected reminders without being pulled under? And this is a question that we get asked a lot of times. Here comes my roommate to come in and probably get something. Uh, so I would just say for me, Rochelle, that birthdays are probably the worst for me. Birthdays are obviously when Randy came into this world, he would have been 40 years old at this point, and just blows my mind. It's just so hard. See, I just said another term, right? That just came out. So how do I face it without being pulled under? Well, a lot of times I will prepare myself so that I just don't get caught off guard. I will know that his birthday's coming. I will know that Christmas is coming. Whatever the event, the day that he passed away, those are things that I just prepare for. I pray. I talk about what we're going to do. I ask God just to put a hedge of protection around me so that I'm not affected by it in the way I should. I will go back and look at places where I can celebrate Randy for his birthday. Think about, what was his favorite thing he wanted to have on his birthday or where he'd want to go. So I just try not to set myself up for failure because it's so easy for us to do. They're anticipatory events that happen. And unfortunately, it's going to be a part of our life. So preparation is usually how I go about doing that. What about you, Rochelle?
Um, I mean, I do try to prepare, but one other event that I want to ask you about, Jackie, is your birthday. Does it affect you when it's your birthday? Because I know a lot of moms, when it's their birthdays, don't feel like celebrating. So, is that something you deal with?
No, actually, my birthday, no, actually, and I will say something. It's interesting that you bring this up. It's because Randy did something on my birthday years prior. He got caught selling marijuana in a highlighter pen, and I was out to lunch with my friends. And when I came home, I had gotten the call that I had to go down to the office, and we had to
Mhm.
go through that thing, and it was on my birthday. So a couple of years later, everything got all worked out. Randy ended up coming to know Jesus through that whole process. So it was a terrible thing, but it was a beautiful thing. I'll just say that. So a couple years later, it was my birthday, and we were going out, and Randy said, "Do you remember, anything bad that's happened on your birthday?" And I stopped, and I was like, "No." And
No. Oh,
he's like so thankful. And then he brought it up to me. And so I just knew that God protected. And it's always been kind of a fun thing. Everybody said I have a birthday month. It's not like I just I have a birthday month. So how about you?
um, I personally, it doesn't really bother me for my own birthday. Um, but like you said, I try to prepare for those events. Um, Birthday, anniversary. Um, and speaking of anniversaries, my actual wedding anniversary was is the day after Kobe passed away.
Oh,
And
wow.
so we found out that he died at like midnight, and we sat with that, my husband and I, all night long. Um, and then the next, like, that was actually my anniversary when we found out. And
Mhm.
so we've chosen to celebrate on February 14th, Valentine's Day, and just made that our anniversary. And
Hmm.
because I, that's difficult to try to celebrate something good like that when,
Yeah,
but I know not everybody can avoid those days. Um, and I think it's just prepare yourself. And I know one of the things you asked was about like not being pulled under. I think if we do get pulled under a little bit, let's say you don't feel like getting out of bed on that day, I don't think you should beat yourself up because sometimes we have to do that.
correct.
Um, Not getting out of bed becomes a problem if it becomes repetitive, and that's the only thing you're doing is not getting out of bed.
Yes.
Um, but if you do that on those days and that's what you feel like doing, my personal opinion is that that's okay because that's what you need at that moment.
Good point. Thank you for bringing that up because I know that, yeah, a lot of us, especially in the very beginning, don't have the ability to be able to have the strength or the desire or the will to be able to pull ourselves together. We just don't. I love that you and your husband have decided to use February 14th. That's a beautiful thing. Like these are things that we have to do, right, Rochelle? We have to change gears a little bit every single time with a lot of different things. I want to take a moment and say hi to, I said hi to Tracy, love you too, Tracy and Kathy and Christy, and hi, Lisa, Teresa King, and Rosemary. I just have to do a little shout out to Rosemary. Rosemary sent me this beautiful gift in the mail this last week. I had no idea who it was from, and I opened it. It was all this fun stuff that was packaged up so lovingly. So thank you so much. And hi, Debbie. There's nothing better than getting something in the mail that you weren't expecting it. Cards and whatnot. So that was such a blessing. So thank you, friend. uh, okay, so what has helped you differentiate between unhealthy coping and truly leaning on Christ for healing? Well, I think you addressed that a little bit on just discovering if you're doing it for any length of time, such as staying in bed, you can't get out of bed, those things. Those are moments where, if you don't have that acknowledgement for yourself, someone else is probably acknowledging it and they're going to say, "Hey, Jackie, you probably need to get out of bed, maybe brush your teeth." And in fact, one of our friends that is in this ministry wrote a book called First Brush Your Teeth. And it was after the loss of one of her children. So yeah, I think that there's very easy for us to want a quick fix. And some people have gone to unhealthy coping devices whether it's a suicidal death, whether it's, whatever the death is, we want to be out of that emotional, mental pain as quick as we can. And, I would always say talk to a doctor first about how you can calm your nerves, things to do rather than, reverting to going to drinking or overworking or overeating or overspending or, I mean, whatever it is, because those moments are over in a moment. Let's see if I can. What did I do? I would say in the beginning, I mean, if I have to be transparent, when I had the boys living with us, there were, being from an Italian background, red wine was always something there, and of course, that's what everybody brought us, in addition to flowers and meals and things like that. And they know I loved a good glass of wine every now and then. But then it became to the point where everybody was like coming over to visit. They'd say, "Hey, let's just have a glass of wine," and just out of being social, Marseille and I would do that. And then, got to the point where I was just like, I'm not feeling good. It wasn't like neither one of us like had got it out of control, but you could see how easily it could get itself out of control. So that was something that I could see myself easily going down that path. I can explain
Um,
them on to you then, my friend.
as far as like unhealthy, um, I think my biggest thing was I sat on the couch. I'm in general was a very active person. Um, I was the fittest I had been my adult life when I lost my son, and I went from that to sitting on the couch, and I literally called myself a sloth. Like that was I was like the sloth is my spirit animal, and I mean it was kind of a joke, but it was hard, and I think there was just one day where I was like, I have to not do this. And I think that the pandemic was probably the turning point for that
Oh yeah.
because then the whole world was sitting on their couch and it
Mhm.
got really old really fast. Um, and so that was that was my unhealthy coping skill. Um,
How long did that go on for, do you think?
it was probably a good 3 years, and during that time, I felt like I had lost myself. Um, and so um, I don't know whether it was a conscious thing that I did or whether, well, in 2019, I had this period of 6 weeks where I literally didn't do anything other than drive myself to therapy, my daughter to therapy, and my daughter to, and at doctor's appointments if we had it, because I wasn't feeling well. And once I got out of that, it was kind of like, well, God, I think, sat me still for a while. Like that was sort of a be still and know moment where he wanted
Mhm.
me to listen to him. And so I did. And one of those things was to, um, in a dream, he told me to build the Be the Light Center. And so I made a youth center in our town. And I think getting out and helping others is what really, truly got me out of that funk.
Wow. Wow. And that was beyond 3 years that happened.
Yep.
Wow. Now, see, when you hear someone say it's been well, they were having a problem on 3 years. Now that sounds like a huge amount of time. Now, I'm sure that that wasn't like you were just on the couch all day long, but it
Yeah.
was probably a huge effort to get up and get going to do anything. Yeah.
Yep. And it's easy to fall back into that too, because the
Mhm.
couch is comfy and we have a lot of things we can binge watch. And, there's lots of things that can draw you back into that lifestyle. And so um, it really was a conscious effort. And then being part of things like Grieving Moms, and I have a local group here, like really helping others is helped me get outside of myself.
Mhm. I just took a trip. I quickly went over and visited with my kids, and I drove from Bend, Oregon down to Sundance, uh, area, Park City, whatever, and did some fall foliage and just to kind of unplug and see my kids and did some biking. And while I'm in the car, because it's 10 hours total, it's kind of like my university that is like I get educated more and I listen to a lot of podcasts or I listen to a lot of audiobooks. And obviously, a lot of them are on grief, which everybody's like, well, that doesn't sound like a fun car ride. But after a while, if this is what God has, this is kind of work I'm in, then this is what I do. But time after time after time, what it kept saying on numerous different podcasts or books, audiobooks, was that community, 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 community was how they said that people are going to survive, or helping others like you did, Rochelle, and getting involved in, our ministry or whatever ministry that you guys decide you need to get into to get yourself help, because otherwise you stay stuck. Hi, Sherry. Sherry is also one of our leaders. Sherry's been on the subject of suicide. So thank you for doing that, Sherry, and thank you for being here. I hope I'm not missing anybody here. But anyway, yeah, community is key. Hi, Jingle. My husky just came in to say hi. This is what Facebook Live is all about. Yeah, you want to say hi? I've been gone, so they're extra special needy right now.
I
uh,
just want to address Teresa King. She says it's been 3 years and I still can't do anything. Well, you heard me. It was 3+ years, and we all have a different journey. And um, we just, I mean, the one thing I never stopped doing was trusting God and keeping Him at the forefront. Um, and I was going to share this later, but I'll share it now. One of the things that I envisioned was like sometimes I didn't even have the strength to cry out to Him. And I would just like literally envision myself laying, and I could see it now, like laying on the floor in my living room on the carpet and just reaching out and just literally touching Jesus' hem and just holding on to the bottom of his hem,
wow,
because
that's
that was all I had the energy to do.
hmm.
And we can all do that. We can hold on to the hem. It doesn't have to be a big standing up and Lord and crying out. It can be a small whisper and just hold on to his hem.
What a beautiful picture. I mean, and unfortunately, what a beautiful picture to know. And he was right there with you. And I mean that I love that story in the Bible too, because I mean that's all she did, and he noticed that, like in that crowd. And it was funny because his disciples are like, what do you mean somebody touched you? Of course everybody's touching you, you're in a crowd of people. And he's like, no, it was like that woman that really desperately needed me, is emptied out, just completely lost and hopeless. And that's how many of us feel in the midst of
Yep.
all this. I was saying, to Rochelle earlier, and I share with my leaders last week, it's like, and by the way, if I seem tired, it's because I am, because I've been driving, and being with grandkids is like amazing, but it's also exhausting. Uh, just trying to get up and give out your love. But, there's just been so many things that there are to pray for, in Rochelle's group, in my family, I'm sure in her family, and so many of our families. It's not just the loss of a child. We look around in the world, there's so much that's there. And what Rochelle and I really want to emphasize is, for we prayed before, as we always do, the moms that are coming on, and the moms will be watching later, to say, we gotta focus on looking up and vertically and not horizontally, because there's just too much that is going on. It's so overwhelming. And you know and people say, I don't even know who to pray for. Everybody's asking to pray for this person. And you know what, a very wise pastor's wife years ago, when I was telling her, I'm like, oh my gosh, I was in a different ministry, and I said, what do you do when people are coming to you and asking you to pray all the time? It's like I would be on my knees 24/7 if I were to pray for every single person. And she said, pray for the one that God places on your heart in that moment. And it's like, well, duh, why didn't I think of that? But in the moment, it's like, I will all of a sudden, I was thinking about your mom, as I was driving, and you have a lot of time while you're driving, or even if you're in the grocery store, somebody pops into your head. I had a dream about an old friend the other day. I actually texted him and just wanted to see there's a reason for that. But just pray for those people that are on your heart because it can get overwhelming. And we already even pray for ourselves. There's a prayer of Jabez, First Chronicles 4:10 is that, oh, that you would bless me indeed. So you're opening your arms to Jesus. You're saying, "Bless me, oh that you bless me indeed, and enlarge my territory." Meaning that I am here, bless me, and I will do work for you in whatever the amount of places and people that you want me to do. But please protect me in the midst of all that. Don't walk into battle without being armored up, as everybody knows. But right now the battle is right within your home a lot of times because there's layer upon layer of things that go on after the loss of a child and continue to go on, whether it's a word or a statement or somebody asking you a certain question or like, you're not over this, whatever it may be. But uh, in this particular topic tonight of this suicide, you're going to get a lot of people that are very inquisitive. They're going to want to know. Some of them don't know how it happened. You don't have to share that if you don't want to share that. Just say, it just it's too hard for me right now. Just know that just to pray for me. You don't have to answer too many questions and know what people's motives are. A lot of them are just really caring. It's not just that they're being nosy. It is alarming. Suicide is a very alarming thing. It happens so suddenly for most people. It comes out of nowhere. Comes out of absolutely nowhere. Okay, Rochelle, I'm gonna let you do this one about speaking into that stigma of
Okay.
suicide.
Um, so one of the things that we wanted to talk about was if you feel called to speak into the stigma of suicide within the church, and what do you wish the body of Christ understood better? Um, I haven't actually spoken in church about suicide, but I have spoken in public. I was interviewed with a former governor here um, uh, who did lose a son to suicide, and his wife suffered, and so he had some mental health initiatives. So I was on television with him. Um, but I do feel like we need to make sure that the church understands. And how do we do that? Well,
Oh no. Well, they said they fixed the problem. Well, okay, she's going to come back on that note. And I love where she's going with this conversation because um, there nobody really wants to talk about it. Whether it's in churches or neighborhoods or whatever it happens to be, it's a scary topic. Oh, here, let's see, and you're back.
oh my God, I'm like talking, all of a sudden I disappear from in front of myself.
I
I'm like,
know, I
where
know.
did
And
I go?
I said she's going down a good path. Hold on, she's coming back.
I'm coming back. Um, so some of it is um, maybe taking the time to talk directly to your pastor, like making an appointment and talking
Mhm.
with your pastor about it. Some of it is really just educating yourself so that you have a better understanding, so that you can have that conversation with your pastor or the leadership in your church. I do feel that things these days are a little better, not always. And um, and even just culturally. For example, there was a student in my local area who did die by suicide, and someone at our church was asking for prayer for them, and somebody asked if it was a suicide, and he said no, they ruled that out. But I know from other sources that it really was a suicide, and so this was an Asian family, and that is not,
It's a cultural thing.
culturally speaking,
Mhm.
that's difficult for them to admit. And so it's not just that culture, it's all cultures,
Sure.
but in particular, some of the Asian cultures are more. We have a huge Hispanic population here, and we've had several students die um, that were from like South America, and the families don't know how to talk about it. And it's no different, no matter what your race or creed or whatever is, it is hard to talk about. Um, and so educating yourself so that you can have a conversation with your pastor or your church's board. And sometimes, if you're not called to do that, that's okay. But I think some of us are called to be the voice so that we can um, talk to the rest of the world and tell them what our experiences are. And then um, also just, my daughter talks very freely on her social media about her mental health struggles, and she's had some Christian people reach out to her and tell her that she needs Jesus, and that medication is of the devil, um, and we need to stand up against that, because the Bible does talk about people who are feeble in mind or have struggles, um, and even about like feeling suicidal. So it's it's not unnatural, it's not uncommon, and so we need to just help educate ourselves so that we can educate them. That's
Well,
our two
I
cents
mean,
on
it's the fall of sin, it's like we're imperfect beings, and things are gonna happen. It's like, you could have a broken arm, you could have a broken brain. I mean, there's so many things that we, are faced with, and you're right, you said earlier, it is so much more welcoming, if you will, or people are open to talking about this more. It's not, you don't have to be as shameful. And I have heard a lot of people saying that they ruled out suicide. And at the end of the day, it's like, well, that's their narrative. And, that's something they have to work out with God. And you have to respect, that wherever
it.
they happen to be. But yeah, and you're right, Rochelle. I mean, it's not like you're called to, be given, a microphone and you have to go out into the world and share in front of thousands of people, but be open and live expectantly, I should say, if you have a story that turned your life around and you know that God wants you to do something with it. Maybe not now, maybe later, and be the spokesperson or help to remove the stigma or encourage someone. That's what this whole month has been about, to be talking openly about a very delicate subject, as well as being able to make it easy for someone to come alongside, me or Rochelle or anybody else that say, hey, you know what, I got to talk to somebody, because we're not here to judge. Most people that have gone through trauma are not here to judge. They're here to listen. They've got a heart. They've gone through it, and it's amazing how many people since Randy died by suicide, in addition to all the other layers that went with it, this things that people that I never knew share with me now, because they're like, well, she's not going to judge me after what, her son did.
Yeah.
Let's address here. Let's see. I think, oh, Carol came on. Hi, Carol. Lynn Carroll came on. We were talking about you earlier, Lynn. And let's see. Deborah, hi, ladies. Seth's mom here, holding onto the hem of his robe, sometimes by a thread. Amen, sister.
Yeah.
Amen, sister. Thank you for sharing that part. Okay, so you get the
Can I
next.
can I share one thing?
Yes,
So
you may.
there's an organization in our area that's called Attitudes in Reverse, and it was started by a family who lost their son to suicide, and their daughter came up with the name about changing the attitudes. Like, we need to put the attitudes in reverse, and they do. They have educated hundreds and hundreds of students in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, but also in other parts of the country, about mental health, about suicide prevention, and they also bring therapy dogs. And so when Kobe first died, everybody kept saying to me, I needed to meet this woman, Trish. You got to meet Trish. You got to meet Trish. And so I met Trish. And she was the first person that I knew that had lost a child to suicide, also. And she was a lifeline for me at first. And so she wrote something, and I asked her permission to share it on my Facebook today, but I'm just going to share it with you all. As Suicide Awareness Month draws to a close, I want to clarify a belief that many have. Many people believe that those who die by suicide die because they feel unloved. Immediately after Kenny's death, that's her son, Kenny. Sorry, disappeared for a second. Immediately after Kenny's death, there were people that blamed us, saying we must have been horrible parents who did not love our son. The reality, she said, the reality, all in capital letters, my dear son once said to me, Mom, I wished you didn't love me so much. It would be easy to die then if she didn't love him so much. Suicide is not about feeling unloved. It is about a brain illness. It breaks my heart that 16 years later, there continues to be tremendous misunderstanding about these illnesses. Let's not judge families. Let's have compassion and kindness in supporting families who lose a loved one to a biological brain illness. And that's important for all of us to remember, is that it is an illness, just like cancer. And yeah, we can pray for the cancer to go away, and we can pray for our child to be healed, and we can pray for the brain illness to go away. But it's not something like we have to trust him and we have to pray about it. But it's no different than any other illness. It's an illness in their brain. And I hope that the moms here know and understand that. And if not, please, do some reading and research yourself so that you can understand what it's all about. And then that's when we share it with our pastors or whoever our Christian leaders are, that it is an illness just like everything else.
Well, and you can be diagnosed with, a cancer, but oftentimes you're not going to know. There's not a diagnosis immediately. All of a sudden, it just comes out of nowhere, so you have no time to prepare for that at all. So it's difficult. And yeah, I want to say too that please, one thing I really want to communicate is that you guys cannot blame yourselves. We share this all the time. Pastor Rick Warren would always say, blame is to be lame. And I mean that lovingly, but it's not your fault. And if that's something that you struggle with, you definitely have to bring that to the throne and ask to have that be removed. That does come
Yes.
from the darkness. Seek counsel. A lot of times people will say, to me, like, Jackie, you've had this happen, you've had that happen. If you sought counsel, even 10 years later, because of these layers that happen, and I'm like, it's not that I don't want it. It's not that I feel that I'm too prideful. I think you just, over time, you've learned how to just do this immediate surrendering it over to Jesus. Um, and it just becomes a natural thing. When you know somebody as well as I feel like I know Jesus, it's just a normal tendency to share something with a friend and give it to him. And it doesn't mean that I still don't need to talk to somebody audibly, that I'm going to get an audible answer back. But I feel as though that's just something to put into practice, ladies, is to constantly, when you have those thoughts, those feelings, whether they're negative, whatever, put up a picture a stop sign in front of your face and just stop it, because that is going to keep you stuck. Uh, in your hardest moments, what promise of Jesus or vision of eternity keeps you moving forward, Rochelle?
Well, part of what my answer was going to be was about the, holding Jesus hem, because I still feel that. And some days, my daughter still struggles. She's 24 years old, and she still has her mental health issues. She's had some health issues, and um, just holding on to that hem. But as far as promise and vision of eternity, I know that I'm going to see Kobe again. And that is joyous. And also just the fact that my mom, my dad, my husband's father, they are there with him, and
Mm,
they get to be in the presence of Jesus. And um, I've never felt like I um, needed to get to heaven quicker because I lost him. There were times where I felt like I wasn't suicidal, but I just felt like I don't know how I'm going to go on. Um,
right.
and so, that part was difficult, but um, to just know that I will see him again and be with him again. I had an experience this summer where I was driving cross country and I hit a really bad storm in the Midwest, and I was scared. And I don't scare easily. I like to drive. I will drive anywhere and I'll drive in bad weather. But this storm was massive, and not being familiar with Midwest storms really kind of freaked me out. And so we stopped at a truck stop, and the wind was blowing and the trees were bending, and I could see this massive thing on the radar. And for the first time, I was really like, if this is where Jesus is going to take me home, then I'm ready.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I just know being ready and prepared to see him makes it easier to go on, because I know that there's a reward at the end.
Yeah, I think I would probably for sure echo that. Like I'm not I don't look forward to it. I do in a sense of like, yes, I look forward to it to be able to meet my Savior and my son and all my loved ones, yes. But I just know that my work is not done here until my work is done here. And as a side note, Stacy, who obviously works for the ministry, speaking of heaven, if you want to watch a really good account and get some questions answered about heaven, she sent me a YouTube, and it's called The Truth About Family in Heaven. Will We Know Each Other by Billy Graham. So I think it's just about the truth. It's just called The Truth About Family in Heaven, Billy Graham. You can type that into YouTube and watch it. It's not real long, but I have to say, she's right, because it was one of the best accounts supported by scripture that I've heard as far as getting some questions answered about when we die and getting to see our loved ones. So that's just a side note. Um, let's see. I think just in kind of closing up here is that living as a witness of hope, I think for everybody, that for those of us that have, you know, lived this out a little bit longer, such as you and I, and not that, obviously we still have a lot of moments. I have a lot of moments. Had one today in the car as I was driving, but it's how can we help others? And a lot of times I know there's a lot of eyes looking at me. And not that I feel as though I have to put on some show, but I just know that it just comes naturally that people, my leaders, they see me cry, they see me get anxiety. I'm a normal person, but then all of a sudden it's like I have to go through that, and then I just keep my eyes again vertically and not horizontally for too length of a time, because people are watching us. People that are lost their kids through, suicide or whatever other thing, just the fact that we've lost a child, there's a lot of people that you don't probably realize are watching you. And if you're not ready to be able to give an explanation about that, or you're just not in the mood for witnessing with people like that, that's okay. You will be able to when you're ready to do that. But I know that a lot of people say your faith is amazing, how that you can continue on, especially in light of everything that's happened, the layers that keep going on with my daughter-in-law and my grandsons that, were Randy's sons, and things that happen. Um, who would I be? Who would Rochelle be without Jesus? Not much. Might be still on the couch, right, Rochelle?
Yep,
Yeah,
there's no doubt.
yeah. So sharing this message of suicide, that is not the end of the story. It's not the end of their story, because as moms or dads, we can continue to live out their legacy. whether it's having some kind of an organization, such as doing an outreach, such as speaking to other to churches, like what we do here. Obviously, Grieving Moms, our ministry, just maybe having a conversation with someone. While I'm traveling, I have conversations with people just at random. And, it's like people are standing next to you. And if someone's not having a good day, I'll just be like, hey, how's your day going or whatever. And some of them actually will open up to me. And somehow the conversation always ends up coming back around about, what do you do? Well, I'm an author, I'm a speaker. Oh, what books do you write? Well, then here we go. Got to go down that path. And, you know, oftentimes I don't offer all that information if I'm not having a good day, but I just know that that's my calling. And I guess that's the question that Jesus is going to ask you is to be, what are you going to do with this horrible pain that has happened to you in your life? Look to me and I'm going to help you day by day, because how you're going to get through it is helping others, as Michelle and I have done, and many of the other moms in this ministry, as well as starting whatever it is that you want to start. But to do it for Jesus, obviously, but do it in their name. It'll continue the legacy of our kids that had an illness. They had a mental illness, and it's not your fault. So be the voice of encouragement to a struggling parent or a teen who may not see their hope yet. I know there's so many of you on here that are just shattered. And I just wish that Michelle and I could just hug each and every one of you and just to tell you that you're going to be okay. But I love that you're here. I always say that I love that you're here because that tells us something. It tells us that you're looking for answers. You're looking for direction. You're looking for a deeper relationship with Jesus. And that's going to have to be between you and him. Hello, Miss Jill. Nice to have you on here. Jill's one of our leaders as well. Is there anything else you want to add, Rochelle?
Um, well, I just want to mention Marianne Flynn. She said, my son didn't die by suicide. He was an addict. I believe God saw Matt's struggles here on earth and brought him home so he could be free of his demons. And yeah, I mean, I feel that way about Kobe. I think that his life would have been even more struggles had he remained here. So, yeah, the Lord can be merciful and
Yeah.
know what our kids are going through.
Yeah.
One other thing I wanted to mention, and I won't even really go into this thing, but it's it says, "Are you prepared to talk to your kids about suicide?" And this is sort of on the prevention front. And so these are some good words that I will share in the comments um, after we're done today. And just for you to look over about how to talk to someone about suicide and to be able to share this with parents that you know. Um, because as I was telling Jackie earlier, my son had come to me several days before he passed away, and he said, like, fell on me crying, and I said, "What's wrong?" And he said, "I don't know." And I said, "Well, do you want to talk about?" And he said, "I don't know what to talk about." And I do believe he knew. I believe that he was having suicidal ideation, and what he didn't know was how to say that to me. And
Mm,
as I said to Jackie, I don't blame myself for that because I didn't know to ask probing questions at that time. And again, I also know that God knows the day that we're born and that we're gonna die. And so I don't feel like I could have made a difference for him, but we can make a difference for someone else. And so I'm going to share this with you in the comments later. So please come back and check it out because we really should be prepared to talk about suicide to children. It comes up in their heads way more than adults think it does. And just as a quick side note, I was on a webinar today talking about suicide prevention and just our broken system and the fact that honestly, if someone is having suicidal ideation, the ER or an inpatient hospital really, it's proven that that's not the best place for them to be. And so we need to be able to talk to our kids and wrap our arms around them and let them know that we're a safe space and that they can talk to us.
Mm, thank you for that. That's beautiful. Yeah, and thank you for putting that in the comments. I think I'll try to put something at the top of this post too that will indicate that. I'm wondering if at some point we can also even put it on our website, Rochelle, so that it can be under certain categories. Another resource. Again, grievingmoms.com is where you guys can get all that information. And Rochelle will include that in the comments, so be sure to look for that. I want to remind everybody also, which is a topic that no one wants to really talk about, which is Christmas. But to prepare, we talked about like how can we prepare for birthdays and holidays and anniversaries and all that. But so for the month of December, every Tuesday for our Facebook Live, we're doing the Nativity Trail again. We didn't do that last year, but if you want to be involved in that, the 2nd, the 9th, the 16th, and then the 23rd will be the last one, obviously. You can sign up to be a part of the Nativity Trail. Actually, it is going to be on a Zoom. It's not going to be on Facebook Live. My apologies.
I was going to say, that was Facebook Live?
Yeah, yes, like I said, I'm so tired from driving last couple of days. But anyway, look for that information on our website. And I just want to thank everybody. Hi, Eileen. I'm sorry that didn't get to see you on there. Um, all of you guys that are here, we have a book called Resurfacing. It's a 12-week workbook that you can go through either on your own. We have groups that are through Zoom in churches and homes. Rochelle is one that also leads some ladies through that.
Workbook
A
that you
lot of
can
leaders.
go through. Sorry, that was me.
Oh, that's like I'm hearing an echo of myself.
It was me. Sorry.
So I have, I mean, all that information, but our fall groups have already begun. We will do another sign up starting in the fall. I mean, sorry, in the winter. But there's always things that you can get on. We have Hope and Healing Camp. That is a website that's got available 24/7. It's got healing videos, just a lot of information that you can turn on if you can't sleep. You can watch some of the stuff that we've done over time. Grieving Moms also has a YouTube. I don't want to inundate you with all of our connections, but if you don't know where to go, there's even a YouTube channel, and the YouTube channel's got all of our Facebook Lives that are on there. I don't know if you even knew that, Rochelle, so you can go back and you can share that link for all your peeps. Hi,
I
Candy.
actually got it in there. I stuck it in there.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
um, and I just want to encourage anyone who's not in a group to please look into that because really being around other grieving moms is just it's like nothing else.
Mm,
And
amen.
no therapist, no counselor, whatever, psychiatrist, being around another person who gets it and especially one who is um, walking with the Lord really makes a difference. And so I would encourage you to join a group.
Amen. It's very minimal. I mean, it's if you're new to a group and with the group, the book, if you can do like it's I think it's $35 and includes the book, and you get to be a part of a group. So it's very very easy to do and very inexpensive. Uh, Carol is saying thank you to you, Rochelle, and you're a beautiful mom. So blessed to be part of this ministry. And we're blessed to have you also, Carol. So yeah, ladies, honestly, like if you are just stuck and this may be the time, it's September. Well, we're almost in October, obviously. Tomorrow is kind of like a new year for me. It's like after summer and the busyness of everything that you do, it's kind of like regroup and start something new, whether it is to get into a Bible study with other moms, whether it's to get into a group here at Grieving Moms Finding Hope, just to, again, be in a community because this journey can be very difficult. You shouldn't do it alone. You should not be isolating yourself. That is when the dark comments come in. Again, picture that stop sign to be put in front of your face that you don't keep going down that path. I have to do that for myself all of the time. So you guys are loved, you guys are appreciated, and look for us next Tuesday. Or next Tuesday, I think Lisa's coming back. Lisa's had a little vacay, and then Rochelle, we'd love to get you back on here too as well. And thank you so much for I gave Rochelle the job. She was voluntold to orchestrate all of September and the speakers. So I want to say thank you to you, Rochelle, because sometimes getting hold of people is not easy. So thank you guys for being a part of the suicide awareness. Blessings to all of you that have lost a child through suicide or any loss, you guys. But just know that God is never going to leave you or forsake you. Look for what it is that He wants you to do. And to see. Um, you're welcome, Marianne. And Rochelle, we're just going to say it. You're going to be okay. You guys are going to
Yes.
just be okay.
Amen.
Yeah. And again, thank you for being here, Rochelle. And all of
My
you, God
pleasure.
bless you guys, and we'll see you next week.
All right. Bye, everyone.